We did this last year, just having a short panel discussion, so it's kind of an interaction to hear what y'all are interested in research, where we should go as far as HHRF, because we have board members up here who would like to hear your insight, or just have an open discussion about research in EAS. So I'm just gonna pass that.
Okay. So thank you all very much on behalf of the Board of Directors for being here. I think there's actually some benefit in being a little bit smaller and being able to make those connections. And so I've already heard of several studies that might kick off. I think that's really exciting. HHRF really wants to be responsive in terms of research to the industry. And right up front, we are just as interested in the well-being of our equine partners as we are in the human outcome piece. And that is it's always been there as a value, but it is a much more clearly articulated value thanks to the work of the Equine Well-Being Committee. And one of the things that I would encourage you to look at is well-being versus welfare. Welfare is a minimum standard, well-being is very different. And I thank Molly for introducing that language. So really it is, what would you all like? What works well for you at our conferences? Ideas, it's really kind of an open forum. Are there topical areas that you're interested in seeing funded? This is not a democracy in that the one that gets the most votes wins. It is food for discussion for the Board of Directors. We have two exciting things that are coming up. One is that we will be announcing a grant opportunity for, is it that number?
10.
What about the other?
Later.
Wait, do we have that number agreed on?
No.
Thank you. Yeah, no? Okay. So we have two grant opportunities coming up. One will be $10,000. That will be more of a very short application and then a pitch deck.
Like Shark Tank.
Like Shark Tank. Really set for innovation. So however you define that. And then
Instructions to come later.
Right, yeah, we only decided this Friday, so. Hey, we worked
Fresh out of the gate.
So the
This is the
idea is,
teaser.
the idea is, I work with a lot of entrepreneurs on another bunch of volunteer work. And the idea, our idea was to make it much like a startup or even an ideation stage startup company, right? Come up with something innovative, something cool, something different, something that can just sort of get you going. And we want to make it so that, it's not a lot of money, so the process of getting selected shouldn't be all that. It should be fairly simple and fairly easy and fairly quick, right? You don't want to spend $20,000 of your time and money to get $10,000 of grants. So, and it should be fun. We want to make it innovative, and on our side it's fun. So we're thinking of this idea of a pitch, like a 10-page pitch deck. What's the market? What's the, all the stuff you would do if you were trying to pitch to get an angel investor to give you some startup money. That's sort of where we are. It'll evolve probably over the next quarter or two as we sort of ferret it out. But that was, want to give something simple, something fast, something fun.
And also something that could be built upon. So
Oh, yeah,
it's
of
something,
course.
an idea that maybe, could be a pilot study and then somebody could build upon that. So it's, like you said, a startup or something interesting and fun, but helpful.
Or a new way to look at something we've been looking at, a different perspective on something we've been looking at.
And then we will have our usual larger grant. We're working on some pieces for that. The best thing I can say is stay tuned. Check back with us. Make it a regular thing to check the website. Facebook.
Twitter.
You Twitter all you want there.
LinkedIn.
But yeah, stay in touch, and we will also share other opportunities
Newsletter.
if we see them. So, with that, I'd like to open the floor. What would you all like to see? Yes.
So my interest area is one thing, but from a instructor having students interested in the field of EAS, I would like to see some discussion, I don't know if it's research, but on sustainability models for EAS programs. Because when I started this, some of the programs that I used to visit when we took field trips, they aren't sustainable, so they can't stay in place, so I'm fine. And there are few and far between that have the longevity of like a Fieldstone. So maybe some research or a literature review or model review on what helps these programs remain sustainable over time, I think is helpful not only for those that are interested in it, but from that realistic, real world side of it, as well as the research and all of the wonderful benefits.
Can we plug the book?
Go for it. Plug the-
Oh, yeah,
Right?
I talked about it.
I'm not probably the one to actually talk about it, but many of us, I think, here, almost
Yeah.
all of us, have been tapped to be contributing authors. I wrote a chapter on board members because that's my specialty, but there's a lot of EAS. So I said I haven't read the whole book yet. It's in final editing. It was actually Cheryl is the I don't know what you call it, the overall
She's the editor.
editor. It'll have about 27 chapters on various topics, everything from what does it take to start a board, how do you sustain the board, how do you engage them, that's the piece I can talk about, but you guys can talk about the horse stuff and what it takes. And so that might actually, I'm gonna give the book a plug, because I think that might actually have,
That would be wonderful
and
to
we can certainly share with you the chapter type headings, or at least the drafts of it, so you can get some feel of what's coming out. And I don't know when.
It's called Integrating Horses into Healing, a Comprehensive Guide. I think the title's still in toward.
Because I heard y'all
Cheryl.
mention that title, but my mind did not go to where.
When it
Well-
comes out, I definitely will have
And I
it
think
on
it's a
social
comprehensive
media.
guide, if you will, starting and
Yes.
running and growing an EAS.
And we don't get a kickback, this is not an advertisement.
Or
I mean, I've had
If-
advertisements.
even rethinking a program or adding a new program.
Yeah.
Other
That's our
are there
other volunteer
research
work.
areas that you all are interested in particular? And we focused
So-
on trauma, yeah?
I'm not a researcher. I came to get the information, which was very good. A lot of it was over my head. So I think about these poor ladies from Wisconsin here. Brains must be spinning. Is there something in between that centers can do? I know I talked to Molly briefly via email. She said, "Are you doing research yet?" I'm there, Is there, we just want to measure some outcomes. Are there?
Program evaluation, I'm gonna actually kick that to one of the researchers to talk about the difference between program evaluation as a great way to begin to think about outcomes versus research, and that word, what does research mean? I'm gonna look at Kimberly, because you and I have had that discussion quite a
Yeah,
bit.
so chapter 7 in the book, actually, which is the title of that chapter, is How Can I Integrate Research into My Practice? But I really do try to spend time of bringing it into what are you already doing. So when I work with a facility, I ask that question, what are you already doing? Because then I can help you think about what information we talk data, in research, right? Like we always talk about, we have to have numbers and evidence-based practices. But when we're doing a program evaluation, what we really want to know is what is your goal for having those participants or clients in your program? And then, are you meeting those goals? Are you measuring those goals? What are you doing in that process? And so when we are doing research, what we're trying to do is look at what are the controls, what are the groups that we're going to make comparisons to, how are we going to do this? A program evaluation, in my mind, and I might defer to my other public health person here, but there's a whole field of program evaluation in public health in particular, in which we're looking at when we're trying to make changes in the health of a community, how are we doing that and why are we doing that? That's all that you need to start with. And so partnering with someone in your area, instead of saying, clearly stating, I do not want to have people sign into a consent form, because there's a huge process when you're actually doing research, but when you're doing program evaluation, it's not the same thing. Now, there are other strategies that we could talk about some other time, where you want to take your program information and turn it into research. We can do that, but just, and I want to piggyback, I don't remember your name. Kimberly.
Yes, Kimberly.
I said I was named the wrong thing anyway. Kimberly, what I would piggyback on kind of this concept is facilities, I would ask for the practice community to think about trying to get your information out there. So allowing a student to do a case study on what is sustainability in your facility, or addressing a problem. So I think that sometimes we use this term research and this kind of like ivory tower, big,
Daunting.
yeah, doom kind of thing, NIH thing. And in reality, student interns want to learn. And so to learn from you about what you're doing and help you in a project that you're doing, it does take effort and time. But if you just explain, I have this many number of participants, I have this many number of horses, this is how I approach things, and even a business student can do a SWOT analysis, something very simplistic of your business model. A public health student could do a program evaluation for a specific program that you're trying to see is it sustainable. If you want help with your financial pieces, these are the conversations I've had with other centers. So, but definitely sustainability, please put it out there.
So coming, not as a researcher, right, coming as a facilitator, I'm totally feeling your pain, because all of a sudden, like, what's a SWOT analysis? I don't have one of those, right? So if you break it down even more of what am I doing and why am I asking that question? So I get people with veterans programs around the country say, did we decrease flashbacks or nightmares? Medication, right? So are we looking for symptom relief? On the other hand, why are you asking about flashbacks and nightmares in a therapeutic riding recreational program? So you're crossing into assuming that every veteran comes in having flashbacks and nightmares and all of that. So make sure why am I asking this question? Is it going to improve my horses and my participants? Do I need to know if you have marital issues or a family history of glaucoma? Right? Like, think about what you're asking. So just even simplifying it into, why am I asking this? Do I only need 3 questions? Did you like it? Will you come back? And will you refer?
Right.
3 questions. That's a great program evaluation. On a Likert scale, 0 to 5, boom, right? So there's a whole lot in between IRBs and research and doing nothing.
I think part of it too is using your resources, like in this room, to figure out exactly, well, if I want to do this research, well, I got my program here, and everything is on the website as far as their bios, and so you could go, and CEUs, past CEUs are all on the website here. So you could go and look at, oh, can I have a conversation with you or email you, and I met you at HHRF's conference and need to kind of just hash this out and ask some questions. Please don't judge. I'm in the code of safety.
And I have to agree with, working with your local universities and the students and intern. Because, while we often say we don't use the horse, in a sense, you can use interns. Technically, they can say no, but, they've got supervisors and they've got chairs and departments that are sort of policing what's happening and will catch some holes before, it even gets to you, so you don't have to be worried about that initially. In the back.
So, sorry, I'm working. One resource, just to point out, or Tara, what did you say? And outside of SWOT analysis, and this is what I personally teach on all the time, is using, dare I say the word, for anybody who writes grants, I'm sorry, logic models.
Oh, you just made my heart
I'm
sing.
sorry.
I love them.
But the reason being, and there's some really, the resource that I use, and it's free, you can go online, not Harvard, Kellogg Foundation has a document on their website. It's 75 pages, but it's mostly graphics, and it teaches you how to use them. So you read a logic model linear, but you actually complete it iteratively. So you're thinking, what are my inputs? What's my long-term impact? How am I going to measure it? So what are the questions? And then what are the activities? So you're not just bringing veterans out to the farm to bring veterans to the farm to say, am I reducing flashbacks? There's no connection, but you're actually saying, well, what is the long-term impact? You know, I want to help reduce suicidality in my community. I want to do that through having committed attendance in my EAS program. I want to, you know, so you're going to measure attendance, you're going to have behavioral change, you have your outcomes, and then you put your activities in, and so you actually have a logical flow to what you're doing, and you have something that you can actually assess. And I make my students do this, thank you, Nancy. So every student that comes in here, the field placement actually does a logic model for one program and then tracks that for their semester. So that's one way that programs can actually help use that educational framework. So the Kellogg Foundation's resource is really good for that. So just my 2 cents on that one.
Are there, HHRF has focused on trauma for the last 2 grant cycles. I do want to explain that thankfully an organization that we intended to fund was extremely honest, told us they had 60 people, veterans. They were only able to identify 6. So we did not make an award last year. That's the why. So we have looked at trauma. Oh, yeah, that was, I mean, but their honesty and their integrity is essential, and that happens to all of us. I mean, anybody that's done it, trying to maintain and get enough people is a difficult thing. So there's nothing wrong with going, my resources changed, something is different, and communicating with us rather than going, you know, I've got a problem and nobody's going to ever know about it. Are there topical areas? So we have looked at trauma. There are some folks that are still, you know, trauma in some ways is a big umbrella. Are there other specific areas that people are looking at? Are there services that they're looking at? You know, we really want to hear from you. What do the practitioners, and this is really where I'm, no offense researchers, but I want to know what the practitioners need to be able to improve what they're doing. That's really the question. What information do you need to improve what you're doing? Yes? Dosing. Okay, so just explain that really quickly, because I'm going to respect that not everybody thinks in those terms,
Sure.
right? That's
So-
a great point.
So how many sessions to get that result that you're looking for?
Okay,
Some kind of a statistical change that shows that this actually is improving the client.
and along with that is frequency, right? TR is given,
Yeah.
what, once a week, because that's how regular riding was. We don't know why TR is given once a week. We don't know if it's more effective any other way,
Yep.
but yeah,
Oh, we know,
we do.
it's just us, sure, it's better, the more often you do it, the better, it's just, that's not the way the programs work.
Right. So,
Therapists see people once a week and riding instructors see people once a week, so it's a system. And we wanna ride too many riders, we wanna ride as many riders as we possibly can, and you can't do that if somebody's riding 3 or 4 times a week. So there's that balance that we're always trying to find, but that dosing is really important. How many weeks does it take before you start seeing it? Some of the researchers were saying that we'd started noticing the changes after 3 weeks or 4 weeks. That's important. That's important to know that.
I saw some other hands. Dosing.
She had one. Yeah.
I'm not actually sure this is directly on point with your question, but I do know that I feel like it has to do with what we're talking about. We have noticed an issue in terms of there's lots of money in our local environment and centers with very large budgets and very low participation levels, whereas we have a very hefty waiting list. Our practice In October, it'll be 20 years, and the only thing we do and have ever done is equine-assisted psychotherapy facilitated by mental health professionals.
Mhm.
Everyone in the barn is a mental health professional from intern on up to seasoned. And it's really hard, and I love being in such a big field, but we're such an anomaly, I guess, and I'm always trying to learn from the big ones and figure out how to be more sustainable and get the business part of it. And when we talk about trauma, I would just really hope if everyone can kind of take this to heart and think that we all as a society go to veterans. We go to domestic violence. And while those are very important populations and we work and see much of that, trauma is also the kid who gets yelled at, the woman who has learned to people please throughout her life, the correlation between ADHD or parenting a child with special needs or living with someone. So there's so much more of it, and part of our strategic plan is really getting, and I don't have necessarily the money or the time because we're in the arena. Well, we don't have an arena, sorry. We're outside. That's a dream of mine that I'm manifesting because I love being next to it, and it's just, I covet it. I have to be honest with you. I'll work on that. I'm getting off track. I think that it's really I'm very hopeful that we can begin as a field to work on the inclusivity of our language as well, so that other people who aren't in this lovely bubble understand that horses are not just for kids with special needs and veterans. Part of our plan is to create a therapy practice, a group practice with couches and lights and air conditioning. Thank you. We're in South Florida, we need that sometimes. And what our pivot was during COVID was we were able to panel with United Healthcare, et cetera, and bring traditional therapy to the barn, which we've been doing every other day anyway, but we had previously only been a boutique practice, so only the people who could pay $200 plus an hour were coming. And we desperately wanted to increase our outcome and our access. And so this is what we're doing next year, is we're gonna put together a regular private practice right next to the barn. We're just releasing the house next door, thank you. And that's gonna be how we're gonna try and bring it into the practice and to the larger community. So if you and I are in session, we can be like, you know what, let's go out.
So I
Get
think
off the
we're all
couch and
gonna
let's
stay
get out.
tuned, and we look forward to hearing what comes of that, and kind of that's a cool research setup. Yes,
So
Roseanne?
kind of on the outside of the therapy piece, one of the things I think Humans and Horses Research Foundation might touch on that they haven't is our 4-H groups are losing riders.
Yeah.
Our kids aren't going into riding. Our middle-aged women are your riders. The riding programs are for kids, while the parents sit in the cars. Who's putting the parents on the horse while the kids are there to get the parent involved? Who's going to enter that horse space with the parent? So my point being, if it's Humans and Horses Research Foundation to raise money, tap where your money is, go to your middle-aged women who can afford to have a horse. And secondly, why isn't, or could there be I'm having trouble, it's a feeling. So why are we not, as a group, tapping and saying, soccer's good, football's good, this is good, that's good, get on a horse, you can learn responsibility and maturity and da-da-da-da-da-da, before you ever hit trauma?
Gotcha, okay, thank you. Yes, Dan?
So a lot of what I do in experiential education is helping to use a lot of different outdoor activities as a conduit to help build relationships. So one was, it's called Leave No Child Indoors, and it's sort of a silly title to throw at what we were trying to get at, and that was helping, in the case of veterans, helping get to know your kids again post-deployment, things like that. But come to find out that it works in a lot of different areas that makes it almost a gateway activity programmatically for people understanding, well, hey, now I have something, now I can share with these two brothers or a parent and their daughter, now have something to share. And they can take that, they can take this, it's a takeaway. I think I used the term cerebral or soulful souvenir. And it's something that not just something to remember, but now maybe something to integrate into their lives. And so I think that follow-up is something that I would like to see more. I know it works, but I would like to see in terms of research, maybe know why.
Okay. Yes?
I think educating the consumer to understand like what is a good facility. Like in Florida, we have a lot of mom and pop shops with people who are like 18 years old, have a horse, and do therapeutic riding. And people come to us and say, I can go there for $25. And I'm like, go there for $25, but that you're not going to get the same service. And it's not about, there's enough to share for everyone. It's not about that, but it's about like how do we do a campaign to teach, like she was saying, like the people, like it's not just, riding isn't for the fancy people who have money. Riding has benefits for everyone, and how can we educate the consumer to know how to go to a place and identify like these are ways that I know that this is a solid ethical practice.
I'm looking at Kathy all of that. That has been probably one of Pat's biggest pushes, but obviously hers.
It's why we're members.
Yep.
Yeah.
Other
We left
research
her on.
areas or topics, Gisela?
I'm interested in equine assisted learning. In the therapy parts, with providers have to have a professional degree. Now, in different countries, they ask the same thing in the learning part. In other countries, like here, for example, we don't ask for that qualification. And I'm wondering if that makes a difference.
I will actually respond really quickly. The center that I run just got funding at the individual level for providing education, and it was straight TR. So, other areas of research. Yes, Bill?
I wonder if HHRF could do even more around facilitating researcher collaboration. I think we had a nice little organic connection with a number of people, which was awesome. But I'm wondering, like maybe host a monthly call, or for people who are interested. Maybe there are other ideas.
Okay, good.
That was one of our things too with the platform, that we hope that we could have a web page, a bulletin board, so you could put up topics or have conversations with each other.
You could do like
or
on a chat,
connections.
like.
Yeah, connection.
Good idea.
And so, yeah, but we could do web pages.
The book from Sally.
All right, so we're getting the 0 time hook from our spectacular folks. Was there one other last thought? Yeah, was that, I got 2, so we're gonna go quick.
So I can be real quick. So often we measure the excitability range, the cortisol with horses, but I wonder if anybody's looking into when a horse gets dull and checked out, like how that could be measured and looked at on the opposite end of it. Because
Great.
again, compliance, willingness.
Super, thank you.
I think we were kind of in sync too, because in practice, I was wondering about perhaps developing decompression activities for the horse itself.
Okay.
Post-training.
Super, Beth.
And this is real quick, but we kind of from a research perspective, when talking for several of you, I think one of the things that we're kind of missing in research is that looking at some of the overarching, what I call overarching outcomes that maybe cross multiple centers. And I know Kathy is working on something with PATH, and I think that that's a great step forward in looking at that. But we have to almost step back and say, how did CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, how did that become a go-to in the psychotherapy? And how can we maybe look at how that came about and how they studied that, and look at how we might be able to do that in our area. And part of that is trying to understand what is really happening across facilities when they talk about therapeutic riding. Are there 4 core areas or for things that they're doing. We don't know if there's consistency. We know that they're accredited, and there's supposed to be consistency, but is there any consistency across what they're covering, maybe 4 constructs or 4 concepts are covered each time? And along with that, are there some overarching outcomes that no matter who you are, that we hope that you would receive from those, that seem to cross different populations? But that has to be thought about very systematically, and I know we've had some discussions, some of the researchers about looking at those, making sure that we have those variables kind of outlined. But I think that would help get more data out there, and I'm hoping that that's a direction that we can go.
Great. Thank you all very, very much. We're at 0 time. I'm going to turn it over to Pebbles to close us out for the day.
I just wanted to say thank you for coming. I couldn't do this without an awesome board and founder, and volunteers and speakers who came to share their knowledge and research studies with us. And look, stay tuned for the next one.
Thank you.